And I'm realizing right now that like this is gonna just be an incoherent rambling. I was intending not to make a video that was just an incoherent rambling, but that really is what this book does. Is it just scrambles your brain? Today we are going to attempt to penetrate the book of the news. Good gosh, did I really just say that? What's up, guys? As you can tell by the title, we're here to talk about this guy, Severian, in Shadow of the Torture by Wolfe. A very polarizing, widely discussed, pretty vintage book now. It is part one, or book one, in the four-part Book of the New Sun that I have all four in here in this really cool edition. And then there is a fifth Coda edition called Earth of the New Sun. I have just really completed like phase one of like trying to wrap my brain around this series, around Gene Wolfe's writing. And to do that, I have read this book twice, and I have listened to several hours of videos, podcasts, and watched, and read, some stuff online. I've found that my confusion has been met with very little resolution so far, but I think that that is part of the point. After two readings of this book and following Severian through some wild adventures, I think I've finally realized that it is a book meant to be experienced rather than read. It is not a book that you can try to figure out on the first read. Clearly not the second read, because I still don't know what's going on. But based on what I've kind of gathered from, just like reading it twice and listening to people talk about it, you have to read the whole series to be, to feel like it's complete. And that makes sense. I'm treating this a lot like I'm treating Neuromancer, I guess, in the Sprawl trilogy. When I read that book, I was very confused. It was very early on in my science fiction reading, I should note, and I didn't really get it. And as I got more versed in that kind of cyberpunk language, and kind of explored some stuff around that era, I started to understand what I was dealing with. I think the same could be said for this, where following Severian for the first time, the main character, a torturer of the Torturers Guild in the Citadel in Nessus, I believe, you expect it to be this kind of typical fantasy story, I think is how you read it at the beginning. I'm going to do a light spoilers overview of this book, and the kind of the setup. Severian, like I said, is our main character. He is a torturer of the Torturers Guild. It's essentially a someone who's carrying out like they're not quite a carnifex yet. Severian becomes one later. They torture, as you would expect in the name, based on like crimes that people commit. And so Severian growing up he grows up in this guild in the Citadel, this tower. And we get this very fantasy landscape of rivers and of a big tower. And, there's not future tech in it. They use swords, they use cloaks, masks. The food is very, basic, if you will. And the landscape just reads like a typical fantasy. And I think Gene Wolfe does such a cool job of setting the landscape up for what is actually a somebody walking. Sam, dude, stop barking, please. Somebody walked by and I had to stop. Sam goes crazy every time somebody walks by. He's a good dog, but he wards off this area of the yard from everybody. Where was I? Gene Wolfe creates a very fantasy-esque landscape for us at the beginning, and I guess it carries throughout, but it gets weird and trippy, and you start to sort of understand that this is deep into the future, potentially millions of years. I don't know exactly how long. There's not really a very clear indication of time, but it's a science fiction kind of guised as a fantasy. I hope I'm using that word right. Which I think is very unique. I haven't encountered a lot of stuff that's written in this way, that's written with an intellect and kind of coyness that Wolfe presents here, where um, his world building mixed with the character, mixed with the kind of themes and stuff, really all plays in a very unique way. So Severian ends up committing the kind of cardinal sin of the Torturers Guild, which is showing mercy to one of their clients, uh, a woman that he is in love with named Thekla. And that sets off a chain of events where he is kind of banished from the guild and goes off to become a carnifex, or like an executioner, in a town, I think north. He's supposed to travel, um, and between the time that he is excommunicated from the guild and like is supposed to be going to this place to be their executioner, he gets wrapped up in this insane plot of intrigue and misdirection, and it's an insane plot. The middle of this book, the second 2/3 of this book, are off the wall bonkers in the best way, because I found on my second reading that I actually I understood the plot well enough to try and like tuck little things away in the back of my brain for the when I read the next book and when I keep going with the series, where it felt like I got enough of a grasp on it. It's like throwing a baseball. Imagine throwing a baseball. I'm a baseball guy, so just bear with me. Imagine somebody lathered the baseball with like olive oil and you were supposed to throw a pitch. That ball is sailing. But if you can kind of wipe that ball off, ergo the second read, if you wipe the ball off and get rid of the olive oil, you can get a better grip on the ball. You're probably still not going to hit the right spot that you want because it's still slick, but it's a better pitch. It's a terrible analogy. Olive oil on a baseball. We're rolling with it. Spoilers ahead, so just keep that in mind. I think that the middle of the book it's packed with tons of symbolism. The entire section of going to the garden, is it the garden of, we have the botanic gardens. The botanic gardens, like from the outside, looks like a normal building, sort of. When you go inside, it's sort of this hall of mirrors where you open a door, and it leads off into another realm that doesn't look like it can physically be housed in the building you saw from the outside. So there's something potentially magical going on here. I don't know if it's magic. I don't know if it's we'd have no idea. And they go into these places that seem out of time and out of space with characters that are unnamed. Father Aniri's mirrors was like a legit, like, I was just tripping during that whole section. And let me back up because I kind of already got to the Botanic Gardens, but I didn't set up how Severian gets there. And if you're at this point, you've probably read the book or you're at least interested enough for me to cover it chronologically. Severian is in this city and he is challenged. He goes into a he goes into a clothing store and is like bamboozled by this brother and sister to go out. He's basically challenged to a duel using a poison flower knife, throwing knife thing called an Avern. Really cool. No idea how he thought of that. And he's tasked with going to get this Avern, return and duel somebody that he's offended, right? And so Agia, this girl, takes him to the Botanic Gardens, like I was saying, and they go through this trippy section. The middle third of the book is just crazy. Doesn't make any sense. It 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 you understand what's happening, but you have no context for it, which I think is the most like disarming and disorienting thing that Gene Wolfe does. Is he tells you what's happening, but you don't have any prior connection to what is happening because Severian is not a reliable narrator. I think it's pretty clear on my second read that like we're not hearing everything from Severian's point of view. If you read closely, it's being told in kind of a coercive way. where he's leaving, he's intentionally seeming to leave details out, gloss over things, um, misremember things, whether intentional or not. And I think the whole middle third of the book is kind of intended to be that, like, that's a plot device that Gene Wolfe uses to like establish the rest of the series. So we have this unreliable narrator who just seems to leave details out. And I think that that's key because the middle section of the book, where he's going through the Father Aneri's Hall of Mirrors, where it's just crazy imagery, crazy environment that they're in. And then they go into the, like, where there's the like building and it's like a beach almost is what I picture, like the jungle. And they meet like these three crazy people. One of them's naked on the floor listening to like the woman talk, and the guy's staring out the window. And I'm just like, who are you people?
Who are you people?
I didn't know what was going on, but I think because I had read it once before, the second time through I was prepared mentally for it, and I was trying to look for clues and details that would inform what was going on. And I didn't get a whole lot, but I think that that was purposeful, and so I'm just rolling with it. Um, I think Gene Wolfe's writing is fun enough. It's kind of a dull way to put it, but it's enjoyable enough that you kind of don't need that necessarily, and some readers will be really turned off by that because they'll want something to make sense before the payoff. And I you don't get much payoff in this book, if any. And so just be aware of that, I guess. As they're going through these botanic gardens, they happen upon I forgot about Vodalus. There's so many moving parts in this book. How do I even talk about it? The very beginning of the book, I'm going to go all the way back, put a pin in that, in the Botanic Gardens, and I'm going to go all the way back really quick to mention a character named Vodalus. At the very beginning of the book, Severian helps save Vodalus's life. This is this like kind of infamous like rebellious leader in their world against the autarch. And so like just a guy who is fighting the power, and they're digging up, Vodalus and his men are digging up a grave. There's a heart-shaped faced woman. Um and Severian like kills a guy, doesn't really talk about it, but he kills a guy, and he saves Vodalus, and Vodalus gives him a gold coin. And for the rest of the novel, it kind of goes away for the middle, but he's kind of captivated by Vodalus, this person. I think, just so everybody's aware before I read anymore, I think the Vodalus isn't a real person. I'm going to completely take a guess there and say that this is a figment inside of Severian's imagination. I don't know exactly why, but it just reads like that, where something happened at the beginning and it didn't happen that way. Um, it feels important, but it just doesn't make any. The events that happen don't make any sense there. And I'm realizing right now that like this is going to just be an incoherent rambling. I was intending not to make a video that was just an incoherent rambling, but that really is what this book does. Is it just scrambles your brain and leaves you either confused and angry or confused and seeking more answers. So you go to the next book, which is what I'm doing. Agia takes Severian to go get this Avern, and they run into a guy who Severian recognizes his voice from the graveyard at the very beginning of the book where he saved Vodalus. We don't know who the man is, but he like ferries them to the Averns, and he clearly he says something to Severian along the lines of like, I don't know what you're talking about, wink wink. I know you, but we're not gonna like, I don't know, I don't associate with Vodalus, kind of thing. There's moments like that in this book that have this sort of like humor to them where you're like, um you're just kind of scratching your head, like almost like you're watching actors play in a television show, but some of the actors, it's like Jury Duty. If you've never seen the show Jury Duty, the the weird uncanniness about that show is that everybody in the show is an actor except for the one main character who like is presented with these insane circumstances that don't seem super real because they're not. They're scripted by other actors. That's the sort of tone that this book gives me. which leaves you just discombobulated the whole time as a reader. But it's such a fascinating experience because I've really never read a book like that before. And maybe there's others out there that other people would could point me to, that have this sort of disarming effect. But Gene Wolfe does it incredibly beautifully too, because the prose are they're fun, they're floral and majestic and beautiful, and they're harsh too. Like when Severian executes somebody, like it's brutal. The torture stuff at the beginning is it's pretty visceral as far as like the the content and the feeling that you grab onto. And so they get the Avern, they go back. Severian realizes like midway through the duel that this guy that challenged him is Aegea's brother, Ageless, and Aegea kind of freaks out because she like confessed her love for Severian, but is also like conflicted because like it's her brother, and the whole time they were just trying to get the sword that Severian was presented with to be the Carnifex Terminus Est, the sword's name. Um, the whole point of this was that they wanted the sword, I guess, and they weren't. They were totally fine just killing Severian and creating this whole crazy plot to get the sword. And I don't know. It really I've forgotten a whole set of characters too. Again, incoherent ramblings of a person trying to read this book and make sense of it. We have Dr. Talos and Baldanders, fantastic name, my favorite name in the whole entire book so far, who are like this traveling performing duo who like put on shows and plays and stuff. And we meet them early on after Severian's been excommunicated from the guild, and then they just show up at the end, and Severian's just like, "I'll go with you guys. We're both heading north." The play that he is putting on with Baldanders and this other very beautiful woman, apparently she's like the most beautiful woman in the world, Severian describes her as. They're putting on this play as Dorcas and Severian like walk up, and they just join into the play for all these people, and like their roles, they just have their role. Like it's I don't know what to make of the play and of Dr. Talos and of Baldanders, and I can't remember the other woman's name, and of Dorcas. The ending of the book doesn't make any sense, and I love it. I know it's got to have something to do with like the whole narrative as a play. I feel like I'm that meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like I'm trying to put it together in my head, and I feel like I'm getting more confused as I talk about it. But I think a really good way maybe to put it, the first book here read like a beautiful puzzle that you've taken out of the box, and there's all of these really cool pieces that you're like, wow, that one's shaped cool. That looks like it's going to go to this piece, and those are going to create a really beautiful segment of this beautiful puzzle at the end. But the puzzle is so unfinished and so chaotic and so hard to put together that you can either give up and just throw the puzzle back into the box and say, well, I'll look at the outside of the box where it shows I could look up spoilers, figure out what happens at the end, and just spoil the fun. But as I said, I think before, how did I put it? This book is meant as an experience, not as just a book to be read. I don't feel like I actually talked about anything. I feel like I just kind of covered stuff that happens in the book. Please forgive me if I didn't really say anything that helped with your understanding of the book. But I wanted to give my like raw reaction to like how it made me feel and what I experienced, because I do think it'll be fun sequentially going back and seeing these videos in order of how what I experienced after this book, and then after the next several books, finishing the series, and then kind of retroactively going back and being like, that's how looking at my reaction. That'll be kind of fun. If nothing else, it'd be fun for me to experience the wild ride, at least documented for myself. I waited to do this review because I really didn't feel equipped at all to talk about it the first time I read it. And what's funny is I still don't feel equipped at all to talk about this book. Uh, but I hope that this was somewhat enjoyable. I hope that this informs some of your reading of this book if you decide to do it. And the I hope that the subsequent books in this series, the ones to follow, are as much fun and as confusing and they pay off eventually, because this was a really it was an enjoyable read the second time. I struggled with it the first time quite a bit, but I didn't dislike it. I think this made me like it more. This helped me establish some footing, and it wiped the olive oil off the baseball. It's the dumbest thing I've said on this channel, I think. Anyway, this has been a very terrible review of The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. I tried my best, and hopefully I'll revisit this with some fresher eyes after I've read Claw of the Conciliator. Stay tuned for that review. I don't know when that one's coming. Um, and if you care to, keep up with an ongoing series, I just announced the other day the Battle of the Shorts, which will be coming out every Saturday at, I think I put 9 a.m. Let's go with 9 a.m. Central Time. I think that's right. Um, and that's going to be coming out every Saturday for, I hope, the next 6 months. I'm going to try my best to stay up to date with it, read some really cool short stories, and we'll see what is the best short story at the end of that giant tournament. So anyway, uh, I've been Dad Like Book. I really appreciate you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourself.